Hey there!
Hey guys, me Ahmad here. I'm here with a new video where I'll be talking about turn-based RPGs versus action RPGs. Now, this video is mostly gonna be me unscripted, so that's the reason why I might sound this whole thing might sound weird and and I'm doing this from my bathroom, so this is the reason why my sound quality is so bad. Anyways, the reason why I'm making this video is because of Elden. I recently played Elden Ring after essentially 3 years of not playing it because of the fact that I had no money. But before Elden Ring and after Elden Ring, I was an avid fan of turn-based games, or at least played a lot of them, especially Shin Megami Tensei. That's one of the games I played the most. Of course, it wasn't the only turn-based RPG I played. I played Pokemon, and goddamn others I forgot, but in the script I will pop them up in the screen. I am Persona 5, but that's always obvious since I play Shin Megami Tensei. That's what introduced me to Shin Megami Tensei, Persona 5. But the thing is that Persona 5 is one of the best turn-based RPGs out there. It's definitely better than most other turn-based RPGs like Final Fantasy or Pokemon itself. Not counting other RPGs that are closer to the strategy games. And of course there's Fear and Hunger, which has a similar themes to Shin Megami Tensei. Well, not literally, but it's a pretty dark RPG, just like Shin Megami Tensei. And the thing is that I had a lot of fun playing Shin Megami Tensei. There's a lot of essentially strategizing and planning that you do, but there are games that you probably play to relax, which sounds like a bad example considering my whole argument is based on Shin Megami Tensei and Elden Ring, but turn-based games usually are a lot more accessible, more chill games. And some of them can even have special gimmicks like Undertale and Deltarune, which are technically turn-based but also have dynamic gimmicks, I will call them. They're dynamic because you have to control your character in order to dodge attacks and have to time your clicks in order to attack your opponent and get the most damage possible. But it's still a turn-based game, and you still probably have to do a bunch of actions and turns so you can play. But with games like Elden Ring and the Dark Souls series, they're action RPGs, and essentially you don't get a turn to strategize and plan your next attack. You have to do that while dodging and fighting your enemy, and which is why generally most of the planning you'll do when fighting a boss is before fighting the boss, before entering the arena and fighting them, because that's essentially where all your preparation will be. Well, because that is where most of preparation is made. Sorry if I repeat myself. When you play Elden Ring and you're gonna go fight Millennia, she's generally considered to be a check build, essentially a check build fight, because you quite literally probably have to change up your strategy or way to play or the way you fight when you reach her. That's happened to me. I tried initially to create a faith strength based character hybrid because I want to play a paladin or really technically a spellblade or a faith-based spellblade. So I always try to split some of my points into faith, with most of it going to strength and then endurance and vigor. But when I reached her, she caught me. She destroyed me completely. Like, I swear to God, one of the things I had to do to beat Melania was first respect my character to you I could put all those points that I had in faith, because there were 10 points. It was 25. When you're a vagabond, you have a set amount of that you can put into your character. But generally speaking, you have 9 faith as a vagabond, and I had at least 10 or 19 to reach 20, and then I wasn't doing as much damage as I wanted against Millennia. And it wasn't really worth it to have all that faith in order to use Flame Grant Me Strength or Golden Vow. Especially because I did have access to the Rune Arc, which let me still use Flame Grant Me Strength and what the fuck's he called? And the Halberg from the first boss when you meet Varen, which lets you use the Golden Bow skill, and so I could still use those 2 skills as well, even with the 9 faith. And so, but I need those points in strength, and then I had to upgrade my Mimic tier, and those are the things that really. That's barely cross strategy, and I used a Claymore and then used my Mimic tier to just stunlock her for a whole fight. And I bait her in like 10 seconds. God damn, because she couldn't fight back against me. Sadly, I don't have any footage from it. Too bad. I'm probably gonna have something to represent all the stuff I'm saying. But yeah, I just had the Mimic tier and my Claymore. I just stunned her constantly because they were just because I was using or spamming R2 with the Mimic tier towards her, so she couldn't do anything. And that way I didn't have to fight to deal with Waterflow Dance or the rod clones that she uses. And that might sound cheap, but that's technically strategizing, because in Shin Megami Tensei, especially when you play games like, for example, for example, 4 or Shin Megami Tensei 3, you have also strategies that also let you use like cheap out a fight or completely destroy a boss because of your build. And that's more or less what happened. I wasn't really over leveled. That's just what happens, because when you make your build, when essentially you build your build around, change your build to fight a specific boss, or have a specific weapon or a skill or spell that would help you. However, there is definitely still skill in these games that really isn't present in turn-based games. Now, just because I had the Mimic tier and upgrade strength and an upgrade Claymore, because I also need to get my Claymore to plus 21 to do this fight. So just because I have all essentially the perfect build to cheese Millennia, doesn't mean I could do that. There was a period of time that I had to attack her and stunlock her, or otherwise she would escape from me and just use for Waterfall Dance and kill me instantly. And then in her second phase, I have to essentially run away from her when she does her Rod Bloom. And if I don't run away from her, she just instantly kills me, because I can't survive even getting hit by a bloom from Millennia even once. That's unlike Shin Megami Tensei, where, for example, most of the time, if you have, it doesn't matter how skilled you are at the game. If you have the build, generally speaking, if you have the build, that lets you cheese the boss, you're gonna cheese the boss definitely. If the boss is built in a way that doesn't let you cheese him, and obviously you have to essentially survive long enough to beat them, like Lucifer or Memalef or any of the DLC bosses from Shin Megami Tensei 4. Now these guys, they don't take skill to beat. You just need to get the right build and then make sure you survive. Now with Shin Megami Tensei 4, it's a little more different, because when I use Flynn, I used a physical build, so that meant that I had to essentially beat what is his fucking name again? I was using a physical build, and I was essentially fighting the Chaos DLC boss, who essentially, if you use a gun or physical attack on him, he's gonna go a physical attack on him. He's gonna essentially do an attack that just completely obliterates you, and in order to survive him, and you know what I did to beat him? I got rid of all my demons. I just fought him all alone, and that just cheesed him because he didn't know what to do anymore. Now it sounds like those things are strategy, but they're really not. They're essentially things that once you exploit, you can exploit very easily, because of the fact that you have turns, and those turns you can always think what to do, and you can always also stall the boss. And because honestly, a lot of these bosses can also just be stalled to death. But like if you have somebody that can instantly heal you, you can beat them or just heal yourself. Alright, that might be a bad example. But usually Shin Megami Tensei is like this. Now there are only a few exceptions, like Memalef and good lord, I forgot his name, or Stephen Hawkins from SMT4 Apocalypse. Like those guys. Like those guys definitely an exception to a rule. But that's only because Memalef has an attack that just instantly kills you. You cannot avoid it, and that's essentially that's essentially something that wouldn't happen in an action game, because even if someone in Elden Ring had an attack that just killed you, no matter what you did, you can still dodge it. You can't do that with Memalef. You cannot dodge her that attack that just kills you instantly and ends the game directly. That's one aspect that probably makes action games a lot more fair than turn-based games, because you have a lot more control, because of the fact that it's a lot more there's no word than dynamic, honestly. But it's a lot more hands-on. You dodge, you fight, you hit, you block. None of those things you can really do, even if there are options given to you. Even if you have the option to block in SMT, it doesn't really matter, because you don't have to time your block. You can't choose when to block. Like you have to essentially hope that the attack that you're blocking is one that you can block, or one that just kills you no matter what, because it's that specific attack that kills you instantly, or one that wasn't worth blocking, or they just ignore you completely. That's not going to happen in Elden Ring, because if they have an animation that clearly communicates that it's gonna hit you. It's that attack that you know what it is, that you can block, that won't instantly kill you, that is definitely going towards you and no one else, but you can block it, because the game communicates that with you. In turn-based games, the communication is very limited, because you have to rely on essentially very limited animation, sprites, or whatever the hell they're saying on screen. Not in Elden Ring. The only thing you can probably say is that the game is really fast-paced, and so you can still get fooled, but that's still essentially going to be depend on your skill. Once you get skilled enough, the speed of bosses in Elden Ring won't really matter, because you already memorized their patterns, I already know, and you already acclimated to that speed. In turn-based games, it's really just about, you know, sometimes they have a pattern to attack, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they react differently depending on your attacks. Like definitely some bosses like a chaos dude, like the chaos boy in the DLC for SMT4, or the law boss in the law DLC boss in SMT4, who essentially you hit his weakness, he always heal himself completely. So you can't use your... Yeah, so they have those patterns, but I don't like those patterns. It's just annoying. Generally speaking, I think that challenging are more annoying than challenging because it's very hard to make a challenging turn-based boss that isn't really gimmicky. Like Memelan, like I think the one who isn't as gimmicky is Lucifer from SMT3. I mean, then it's mostly because he resists everything. He resists everything, and he has a shit ton of health. So essentially, your best option with your character is to have a demon that can heal all you and all your demons, and then you all try to keep yourself alive while essentially being on this guy till he dies. That's really the only thing which you could argue is the same thing for Elden Ring or action RPGs, except not really because of the fact because of the movement, the attack, the blocking, the timing, the fact that you really interacting and are in the fight. While in turn-based games, you have to essentially imagine the fight. It really makes you essentially feel like you're actually part of the fight, or part of it in Elden Ring, which isn't really the case with the turn-based games, actually Megami Tensei. Now, I would like to essentially start with this video with comparing millennia when the hardest bosses in Elden Ring and in FromSoft games to Memelef, one of the hardest bosses in Shin Megami Tensei history as well. That's because Memelef generally has a pattern to her, but she's essentially a really bullshit boss. She has an attack that it doesn't matter if you did everything properly during that fight. She just kills you instantly, and ends the fight right there. You have to repeat it. While Millennia seems to have the same thing with water flow downs, but if you get good enough at the game, you can dodge that attack and never get hit by it. Which is not the case with Memelef. In Memelef, that attack is bullshit. If she hits you with it, you die. And that's essentially one of my main gripes with turn-based games. They're very gimmicky. They don't really... The challenge they pose is primarily never really be against your own skill. It would be against your patience level. Whereas Elden Ring, well, maybe at the beginning of the game, that's the case. You have to memorize the boss's patterns, survive and heal yourself. But after that, you become a god. You can... In Elden Ring, there's a bunch of challenge runs where essentially you never get hit, or you never get hit. Well, you essentially beat the game with this amount of with just this stat, with this amount of health, with yada yada yada. And it's all based on your skill. You can essentially don't even need to overheal to beat the boss, or learn or wait for it to do some moves to get punished. But you can just beat them and with whatever master of the skills you did, will be dodging, blocking, parrying, or bullshitting with them spells. But not with turn-based games like Shin Megami Tensei. Even though there are challenge runs in Shin Megami Tensei, it'll always just be things like with less demons, with no fusions, with essentially just your character, but it's always just the same thing. It's just essentially kind of like a gimmick, a limitation, not really actually something that would actually challenge your skill, because even if you only have your one character, your character can heal himself and still produce a lot of damage. It doesn't really matter. And it doesn't really matter because the only skill that's challenging you in this case is one, your patience, and two, your preparation. Which isn't really the same thing as challenging your skill, because there's no real skill going into turn-based games. Which isn't a bad thing. It just means it's different. But that's the thing. That's something a beauty I never saw before in action RPGs, is that there's definitely there you can always be better, and you can essentially you can get good enough to never be hit. And I find that beautiful, because it means that you'll always have room to grow in Elden Ring, Dark Souls, or Sekiro, or Bloodborne, but that's not really the same thing in Shin Megami Tensei games or Pokemon. There's always a mass. Well, actually, maybe not Pokemon. Pokemon definitely has a once you get to a directly in Pokemon, you definitely reach a very weird level of skill. The fights really get a little weird, especially competitive. But still doesn't really compare to the action RPGs.